The year is 1991, and the internal temperature at Mazda is roasting hot. They are on a winning streak. In 1991, of course, they've won the Le Mans 24-hour race, the first Japanese car ever to do so in the iconic 787B, also powered by a rotary engine, and the MX-5 on a production scale was a huge success in terms of sales and also feedback from journalists and purchasers alike. Plus, starting in 1989, they had this fun little interdepartmental competition or contest of sorts wherein their own employees from various departments could try and come up with these creative mobility solutions, little interesting gadgets and gizmos that could potentially come to something. If nothing else, maybe just a little bit of marketing for Mazda. And that's exactly what this one became. Now, of course, you'll have seen from the title, and definitely from the thumb, that this is easily one of, if not the craziest vehicle to ever feature in Unsung Heroes so far. Ironically, it's pretty much also the least impressive in terms of performance, as you'd assume. It has 1.7 horsepower, but we'll get back to those specs in just a second, because this drivable box, if you will, the Mazda Suitcase Car, as it's often called, is not necessarily a Mazda vehicle per se. It was built by their employees, but it wasn't like they built every single tiny nut and bolt there. They kind of cobbled it together from a few different things, such as a Samsonite suitcase, which was about 22 by 30 inches in dimensions, which is a 57 by 75 centimeter suitcase. So pretty much one of the biggest ones they could find in order to fit the deconstructed skeleton, you could say, and the heart and soul of a pocket bike into that. Which of course included the wheels, 3 wheels in the case of this one, and a 33.6cc two-stroke engine, putting out the aforementioned 1.7 horsepower. Now, it also features the handlebars from the pocket bike, it has the tyres and the wheels, about 4 to 6 inches in diameter there, and it took about a minute to turn it from its suitcase form into its drivable trike form, you could say, technically as a 3-wheeler. So you would rotate the front wheel kind of out of a hole in the side of the suitcase, assemble the handlebars, assemble the seat, and then attach the 2 outer wheels on the sides of the suitcase and drive away to your heart's content, at least within certain parameters, of course. Now, the performance was actually not bad. It's something kind of akin to the mini-moto craze of the 2000s, and currently, of course, the electric scooter craze, which is kind of going away for legal reasons, but much like those, this was small but very quick, about 19 miles an hour, or 30 kilometers an hour, which is pretty quick for a suitcase. Could have maybe even ended up in the Guinness Book of Records or something as the world's fastest suitcase, I guess. But it was just an interesting little wacky idea in terms of, in particular, airport transport. So this isn't the first time, certainly wasn't the last either, that somebody tried a different approach to moving around sometimes a very large open area of airport. Except usually you don't do it at 20 miles an hour. Because if you are flying around an airport as low as physically possible, pretty much, which is what this suitcase is, at 20 miles an hour, at best, you are going to destroy the shins of every single person you run into. So for obvious reasons, the vehicle didn't end up in production, but ultimately 3 were actually built. The original, of course, in Japan, then a US version and an EU version were built as well. You can kind of see the different colours on Google. Now, one of them disappeared, the EU version. It's not known as far as I could find where that one is now. The original, the prototype, the Japanese version, was unfortunately, according to Mazda themselves, mistakenly disposed of. And I could kind of believe that. You could easily see this like being propped up against some, toolbox or something, probably folded up in its suitcase form, and maybe some kind of spring cleaning ensued, and somebody who didn't know what this suitcase was, maybe they even opened it and just saw this seemingly random bunch of parts and assumed it was trash and threw it away. I could easily see that happening, and that's probably something that did happen. The one that does still remain is the US version, and one of the 3 versions was even showcased next to the iconic Mazda 787B at the Frankfurt Motor Show. in 1991 as well, and I'm surprised there aren't more pictures of that, because you'd think a tiny little suitcase next to one of the most iconic race cars of all time would kind of have a few more eyes on it. Now, of course, the main reason why this never reached production in any kind of form is already in the video. I already talked about the fact that it's just a massive health and safety hazard, but there was also a secondary problem, which you may be able to assume, and that is, of course, the weight. It was very, very heavy. I mean, a large suitcase to begin with is designed to be heavy, but not 32 kilos of heavy, which is 70 pounds. This is a very, very heavy carry-on. So the only way that you could really implement something like this is if you actually had them owned by the airport themselves and were just used as a form of transport within the airport. But again, unless you turn the airport into basically like Mario Kart, which is kind of a cool idea, it's just not going to work in practice. However, it was featured on the Oprah show back in the early 90s, and it was showcased in other places such as the motor show that I mentioned and beyond, to still give Mazda a huge amount of publicity on top of the successes that they were already having. And it's actually quite surprising to me that this suitcase car is not far better known than it actually is. You would think this would be like a meme of the car world, certainly of these super rare unsung heroes, and it kind of is just a meme in its own right. But again, I'm surprised that more people don't talk about it and memify it and have it as like one of their top 10 dream vehicles and all that kind of stuff. Plus, the cool thing about this is, in theory, if you wanted a replica of something like this, well, it actually wouldn't be too difficult to do one. In fact, you could probably make like a today's equivalent electric version of this if you wanted to, although with a battery pack, that thing's probably going to weigh even more than 30 kilos as it did back then. Overall, of course, it's never going to have any kind of racing history or commercial success, but I definitely think it deserves a place in Unsung Heroes purely because of how crazy this little thing is. It's cute, it's fun, it's a fundamentally flawed idea, but Mazda, as always, putting the fun in fundamentally flawed. This, I think, is a really cool little vehicle. So, of course, if you're new to Unsung Heroes, if this is your first episode, then be sure to check out others. There are, as the title suggests, hundreds of these on the channel. And, of course, jump over to the Discord chat for the channel, where you can vote on this one as being one of your favourite episodes, if you so choose. But until next time, I'll see you then. And for now, as always, thanks for watching.